Welcome back to the shop, everybody. It's great to have you here. Today is a special day because I have visiting blacksmith Ethan Harty. Welcome here, Ethan. It's great to have you.
Nice to meet you, Tim.
He's a blacksmith from a different part of Canada. Does tool making, makes super sweet hammers and a couple other cool tools. We'll make sure to leave all his link in the description below so you can check him out. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of just understanding where Ethan's been coming from, how he got interested in blacksmithing, and then also we're going to make a round back flatter, super cool tool under the power hammer. That's our plan today. Stick around. Looking forward to this one. So what Ethan and I are quickly working on is this round back flatter, but what's interesting is we're going to make it lopsided, and you'll see how that forms up here in a minute. This is an idea that came from Matt Marty. I was making a different part that wasn't this, and he said, oh, hey Tim, that looks like the old flatters that they used to run lopsided like that. So in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, that would be cool to try. So today we're trying this idea, and the hope is that you gain a little bit of performance out of this tool rather than having it all symmetrical. You run it a little bit lopsided so that you can get a little bit better on pre-tapering and maybe getting into a tight spot. It's really a small performance increase we're looking for, but I thought it would be fun to try it nevertheless and see how it goes. So that's what Ethan and I are going to be working on right now. I thought the number one question we should ask you first off is, how did you get interested in blacksmithing?
Okay. Well, I've been interested, I'm kind of an old soul, I guess you'd say. I've been interested in steam engines ever since I was a little kid, ever since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I liked old music, I like old machines especially. And so I used to spend summers with a guy who was a gunsmith, and he built steam engines. That's where I was exposed to metalworking, whether it was a little bit of machining, a little bit of hot work. Of course, all the hot work was very crude, but that's where I got introduced to blacksmithing. But then slowly, I have grown like a cancer and taken over the whole building. And now we have other sheds to put a lot of the tractors in, but I've kind of migrated, and as I've built, I guess it's basically into a business now, and but I had a lot of trouble with just messing up. And on a run of hammers that I just did, you know, I've made, for my age especially, in the time I've been forging, I've made lots of hammers, hundreds of hammers. And so on a recent order, I did 100 hammers, and I ended up throwing away, I have a bucket of almost, I think, 25 that are wrong. And somehow, if you can find the right mindset to focus and find a balance between, you know, it's not efficient to spend all your time trying to make everything perfect, and it's not worth your time to just blast through everything and then end up throwing away a huge portion of what you made. So that's something that I would say that I struggled with, that cost me money and time, and that needs to be worked on. So, well,
that's something that I struggle with too. Even on batches of axes, the exact same thing happens. You lose a group of them out of each batch, and obviously you're trying for perfection and get better, but at the same time, this is what handcrafted means, and there's a skilled labor. And so if you have skilled labor, that's a person, and there's always variables and people. No matter how good you get, the better you get, the more tight you can be. But that's the beauty of our craft in a sense, right?
Yeah.
What's so interesting is that it's such an underrated thing, and people don't understand that blacksmithing is such a hard skill to develop because it takes so long. Because to practice one process sometimes can take up to a couple hours to execute at one time. It's not like in music when you, for example, if you're practicing a guitar, you practice the guitar and you make the riff wrong. You do that riff 1,000 times and the cost of making one wrong out of them is nothing. But if you make 1,000 hammers and you biff one of them, that's a considerable amount of waste of time and value of money that's gone away. And so that's why blacksmithing is so hard to become skilled at, because it takes so much time and so much effort. But nevertheless, you just start and you slowly continue to work up. We all do, right? We're all on different tiers as we continue to progress, but it is the excitement of it, right? To see yourself get better and better at it too. So. If somebody who's looking for blacksmithing tools, do you think that there would be a tip that you could give them that you'd be, oh, this has worked pretty good for me for acquiring a blacksmithing tool?
It seems like almost basically any tool that can be acquired very easily for money. But basically we're wondering how, you know.
On a budget.
On a budget.
No money, this much. That's how you start blacksmithing.
Yeah. And so I found it really hard to acquire tools when I first started. But then once I not necessarily established myself, but became known that I was interested, it's like momentum or osmosis. It's slowly more and more stuff started to come to me as I grew. So I realized not only was there anvils that were not very far away from me, but the first power hammer that I bought, which was a 25-pound little giant,
okay, perfect.
when I was 12, I think, was 10 miles down the road from me.
Yeah.
And it was the original power hammer that came out of one of the local towns.
That's so cool.
So things like that. And then now that I seem to be more well known, it's as if stuff is brought to me, or I get phone calls from people saying, hey, do you want this? Do you want this? And a lot of it is at a really cheap price. And I think it's just hard to get over that initial, you know, because you don't know anyone. So it's hard to have connections. And then once you make connections, that's where the stuff comes from. So try and make connections with other blacksmiths. We're really friendly. I know that if someone asks me and they have a good story, you know, if they ask me for help, I'm more than willing to say, I know where something like that is. And I know that you're like that too. Like if there's a tool in mind, you know where to get stuff.
Well, I actually, I'm not that nice of a guy. I have a couple tools that I know about that I might want that, so I'll just keep that quiet and I'll just wait, because, you know, once you let it out, it's gone. But it's kind of funny too. The other thing, I don't know if you know this, but my Bechet power hammer, my main one, I got it a couple towns down from where you are right now. I got it out of Sundre, Alberta. Wow. So hopefully you don't hold that against me, because I snatched that one out. Thanks, Ethan. Blacksmithing, what do you think you would tell the young Ethan Harty? What piece of advice that you know now would you bring back as to encourage yourself as you start out?
A pretty cliched piece of advice, but only that because it's true, and that would be because I didn't have to worry so much about what was going to come down the line, if that makes sense, as far as meeting people. Or just gaining knowledge, because time is important too. It can't all just come right now. You know, it takes time to meet people and learn things, and to not be worried about that, because if I didn't know something right then, it's okay, and it was going to take. I might have to, because I've had a lot of things that are just really surprising and wonderful, like almost miracles, that perfect times that I've met people and they've helped me with things, or whether that's acquiring tools or knowledge, that time is okay.
Interesting.
Time is okay. And that's really, and it's really hard, especially when I was, 11, 12, 13, as you can imagine when you're a young kid like that, really young, time goes by really slowly.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to imagine that anything would come down the line that's different than what you have now. And it's amazing how fast you progress even then.
What would you like to see yourself doing as a blacksmith, projecting into like 10 years ahead? Like, where would you like to see your company or you, or what would you be liking to make, you know, in a longer time frame?
Well, I don't have one specific projected vision, I would say. I have a few directions or a few different ideas. One of them is, which really speaks to the younger part of me, and original passions, but it would be industrial forging.
Okay.
Because I've always liked old and big machinery. I love seeing like the videos and watching and doing like forging with big power hammers and big pieces of steel. I like making, I don't want to say utilitarian type things, but very useful things, like seeing some of the industrial forging making shafts and big bearing races and things like that. I find that really intriguing and interesting. I was shown into that world a little bit, or it got interested in it by watching people like Roger Lund from Sweden.
Yeah, totally.
Matt and Marty introduced me to that kind of, that type of work was still being done.
Yeah.
That was really cool for me. At the same time, I, of course, because I like old things and the heritage aspect of it, something involving restoring and working on steam engines, of course that's kind of big work too, would be really cool as well. I'm sure that I will still love making tools. I learned blacksmithing mostly through taking the Tools to Make Tools curriculum with Alex Steele.
Okay.
And
cool.
so,
very cool.
And knowing him, so I like making tools, and I don't want to rule that out either, because
Yeah.
I love doing that kind of thing too. So those are some of the ideas that I have for the future.
So you can see there, it definitely worked. You definitely got the taper coming on the front of it with just using this tool, which is super cool. It would do that with a regular one. It's still hot. It would do that with a regular one, but you know, maybe this is gonna do it a little bit quicker. I actually thought it would maybe be a little bit better performance than we got out of that, but nevertheless, I wanna keep this tool around to try different spots. And then I guess you would make a right and a left one if this is a tool that we use a lot. A pretty cool tool to have nevertheless. Thanks so much for coming to the shop and visiting and hanging out and talking. I love it. It's super cool to hear another blacksmith talk about these types of things and whatnot. If people want to find you and find your goods that you sell, how do we do that?
Best place to look is #1 on Instagram, and my username is @_Ethan Harty. It's just Ethan Harty. And my website is www.ethanhardyblacksmith.com. I have a YouTube channel that's also named Ethan Harty.
I'll put the links to all of that in the description below so you can check that out. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this beneficial, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tim.